Hey, everybody. Welcome to Working from Heart. My name is Alona Elkayam, and I'm the CEO and founder of Far From Timid. It's a brand and performance agency that builds and owns legendary brands. I'm very excited today to have Zeev Klein and Jeff Bandman on our show for episode 7, Day in the Life in the Metaverse. And thank you to all of our viewers for joining us today. I know how busy everybody is. Working from Heart is a Far From Timid series from our online magazine, Honeypot. And this series brings culture warriors and thought leaders to our sound waves to share ideas that'll help you hopefully fall in love with your life and purpose. So you can sign up for the Honeypot newsletter here on this QR code. Let's just make some introductions to our guests. We've got Zeev Klein. He's a general partner and co-founder of Landmark Ventures, and he's a leading investment bank and, Landmark Ventures is a leading investment bank and corporate advisory firm where he leads public companies and top investment funds. He's also the founder of the House of Firsts, which is a platform that nurtures the connection between art, blockchain, and culture, cultivating extraordinary voices and talent. Zeev is also the founder of Royal Society, a collection of 10,000 handmade NFT playing cards in the metaverse and also in real life. Along with a new platform, House of Firsts focuses on new novel and noteworthy NFT collections from established artists. So thank you so much for joining us today, Zeev. And we've got Jeff Bandman, who is a founder and principal of Bandman Advisors, a consulting and advisory practice focused on innovation and regulation in financial services, with special expertise in fintech and regtech. He was the founding director of the lab for the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, where he led fintech and regtech coordination. And currently, Jeff is working with leading NFT collectors to set up an NFT museum and other NFT initiatives, including an open city in the metaverse. So thank you for your time today. And those of you who are watching, I wanted to let you know that around 4:45, we'll have a Q&A, so you can send in your questions in the comments, and hopefully we'll try to get to as many as we can. So let's get to it. The metaverse is the internet in 3D. That's how I like to describe it. And it's been around for a while. The platform Second Life launched in 2003. Minecraft in 2009. Cryptocurrencies have been around with Bitcoin launching in 2009. But it seems that ever since Facebook changed its name to Meta, many newcomers like myself took notice, and it feels like suddenly there are NFT collections and new currencies popping up everywhere. This universe gave me a little bit of ADD as I was trying to navigate it, and I got a little bit overwhelmed with the decentralized autonomous organizations, the flurry of NFT platforms like OpenSea, Super Rare, Nifty Gateway. So can you share how you see the convergence of the crypto world, the NFT world, and then within context to the metaverse as a whole, and where you think growth is headed? Zeev, would you like to start off?
Sure. So first of all, thank you for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. That's a complex question. So if we slow it down for a moment, I think it has a lot of pieces. When I speak and connect with some of my peers who maybe are less fluent, usually I begin to tell a story as follows. In my mind, I think if we were to put things on a timeline, a lot of the innovation, and if we'll call it even the renaissance that we're experiencing, really is starting at like a C to C, meaning kind of consumer to consumer, even kind of creator to collector. And so kind of individuals to individuals. And I think in the story of where we are, we're kind of right at the transition from that being the origin story into now kind of a B2C environment. And by that, I mean, we're really seeing the first entrance from big brands and big businesses enter the metaverse. I appreciate your comment about Facebook and kind of the meta rebrand. I would say that they're one of a few brands, Nike being another, Adidas, et cetera, that have really signaled an interest. But even more recent than that, we're seeing a number of luxury brands and others kind of enter this world and take some of the traditional B2C that they've done and now apply it into kind of a virtual or a metaverse. But I actually think where this ends will be the B2B market. And we'll talk about that, I imagine, in a moment. But when it's all said and done, I think we're going to see probably 100x larger opportunity in the B2B space when this kind of pattern emerges. And so I like to contextualize that just as folks kind of begin to see, as you identified, maybe some art or some Bored Ape, Pudgy Penguin, Lazy Lion, kind of all these initial things that you might be hearing about or seeing about. I just want folks to understand this is really just the earliest beginnings on what will wind up being, I think, probably the most profound journey kind of in the tech world since kind of the internet was essentially born. I say this reminds me of like 1995 internet in terms of kind of where we are on what I think will be just a massive wave of opportunity.
I totally agree. And I do think there's really interesting connections between the fashion and gaming worlds too. So Jeff, what about you? What's your vision in terms of?
Yeah. So I would say that it is impossible to be sufficiently optimistic or bullish about the growth in this space, first of all. And I think Zeev was being kind of polite when he said this is going to grow 100x. This is going to grow 1,000x and then another 1,000x. And maybe to take like one metric, sort of starting with the world of NFTs, and then I'll kind of come back to how I kind of think of the metaverse. Right, like there's currently on like sort of the biggest marketplace for NFTs, OpenSea, something like 300,000 active wallets. So if you multiply that by 1,000 people, you get to 300 million, and then when you multiply that by another 1,000 people, that's 3 billion. And I think that the addressable market or the addressable universe for people, not just who will buy or want NFTs and participate in the life of the metaverse, is literally anybody and everybody who has, an internet connection, which hopefully will be, everybody on the planet. And well, what is the metaverse? So first of all, I believe that there will be many metaverses, not just one. And I think we're already partway to the metaverse, and sort of the term originated in a novel in the early 1990s by Neil Stephenson called Snow Crash, and that was a somewhat dystopian world where people put on these kind of VR headsets and were able to assume these avatars. And a lot of the language and concepts from that have already started to mature. But if we even look back at our life compared to the way it was 5 or 10 years ago, no one would disagree. All our lives have become a lot more digital between, our devices and social media and, wearables, and, where will it go in another 5 to 10 years? And, I wouldn't limit the idea of the universe to, metaverse, I think part of it, we'll have, maybe now we have these clunky VR headsets, and then, we'll have,
Right.
Other devices, and, maybe other senses will come into the picture, not just, sight and sound, but there will be, a great many metaverses. And, if you say, will our lives be more digital in 5 years and 10 years? Obviously our lives will be more digital. And so, I think that, as people spend more and more of their time in these kind of digital planes, they are going to want to take and have the things that, resonate with them, which are, the personal things, which are our brands, the art, the things that reflect their taste. And maybe just kind of one more, just kind of broad thing about, what is the metaverse. So I think, one of the most important things, and, Zeev talked about internet 1995, and I think that's a really important comparison, because, the internet, it originated from government, it originated from, academia. And, it's open. There's no CEO of the internet who can tell you you can or can't, or there is a CEO of the internet. There is no CEO of email who will tell you you can't access email, but there is a CEO of Facebook who will tell you you can't access Facebook. And there is a CEO of Twitter who says you can't access, you can't access short message, social media. And so, I think one of the big questions, as exciting as the metaverse is, and I think as inevitable as this marching improvement of technology is going to be, one of the questions is, are we going to have an open metaverse, which is decentralized and accessible to everybody, or are we going to have a closed metaverse where you have to log into your, Meta account and Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey can decide whether you can access it and then punish you if they don't like you say and keep you off it?
Thank you, Jeff. That was very expansive. And I think that was really beneficial we have like a mixed audience of marketing and technology and crypto and creators. So that was you really hit everybody's sweet spot with that answer. So thank you. So creators are really having their day. I think that was one of the things that really excited me about the metaverse. It felt very creator driven. Especially with the world of NFTs and really democratizing art. And while the technology isn't here yet for all of us to start creating our own 3D universes right now, but we can enter in a very basic way through NFT art or music or prose. And brands have started, entering in that way. Many brands have started entering the metaverse with NFT collections, and we'll get into some brands that have created universes of their own, like Gucci and SK2. But in terms of what do you think are the most exciting opportunities for culture and community, art and commerce, and who do you think are the big players? Zeev, that question is a good question for you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So I guess one thing that I would just kind of say, at least in my definition of metaverse, I don't view metaverse as the literal like entrance into like a VR, AR world. I don't feel like when we talk about the metaverse at present, it requires the immersion that I think you maybe had painted. At the very least, I think I feel like some of the things that are happening for simplicity in 2D, some of the dialogues and relationships and conversations that are being had, I think are metaverse light or metaverse like, and would qualify under my present day definition of metaverse. And so I would probably, if we needed to like draw the line of where the metaverse is, I probably define it much more loosely than the way you do. And in that sense, I think it's a much more encompassing definition that includes kind of additional current day trends. So answering your question, I think one of the biggest things we're seeing primarily at present, driven from the NFT world, is the intersection between NFTs, brands, and culture. And so, at present, the number one NFT is something called the Bored Ape Yacht Club. It was give or take birthed on April 30th of last year. So it's about 10 months old, which is relatively new. For those who maybe aren't familiar, at the time of mint, it was about something in the range of $200 to mint one. And at present, the cheapest one is probably in the range of about $250,000. So you're looking at about 1,000x increase in a year, which is pretty astronomical and atypical. But there's a few reasons why. One of the things that Bored Ape did was really popularize the transfer of intellectual property. And so when you own the NFT from Bored Apes, you own the entire IP. I think when, and Jeff can probably speak more to this, when we imagine what the future holds, the ownership and opportunity to treat IP perhaps different than what we had seen in Web 1, Web 2, and now into Web 3, I think is one of the more unique and exciting elements of this. And so you have the right to turn your Bored Ape into a t-shirt, a hat, a logo. Arizona Iced Tea acquired one. I think, rumor is they might even put them on Arizona iced tea cans, but that is absolutely their right because they are the IP holders. And so
Right.
one of the interesting things that'll emerge is as we begin to see these large brands, how do they take traditionally protected IP and perhaps create new and novel ways to increase the size of the ecosystem by allowing either partial or full IP. And so I can pause there. We can keep talking about it, but I think there's just so many opportunities narrow on the IP front, let alone as we look at the expansion into culture, the expansion into clothing, merchandise, music, fashion, video, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think IP is a really interesting issue, especially with I don't know if you know about the Hermes case with their Birkin bag. Anyway, that was a really interesting case where an NFT artist took their bag and refashioned it and then sold an NFT collection, and that went to court. But Jeff, I don't know if you had any point of view on where you think the most exciting opportunities for culture and community exist in the metaverse, and who you think are the big players.
Yeah, I mean, it's so early, and I think the opportunities are plentiful. I absolutely agree with Zev around kind of all these different models for IP rights and how those are going to be handled. And there's a lot of debate in the NFT community, about like I think there's an appreciation of the rights of creators, and then you have actually kind of within the contract automation, there's a way that actually it's sort of what in Europe, where it's most widespread, is called moral rights, right? If painter or sculptor, and then there's later sales, they get a piece of it kind of perpetually. And now, one of the technological achievements of these NFTs is it can be built in from the start, that whenever there's a transfer, the creator still gains a reward. Now, which is, it's a a complete change and gives, relative to, not only is it a change in the economic model, but it potentially changes the reward structure, from, where intermediaries to creators. Although I do think there will still be a need for, intermediaries, partly because, there will be, billions and trillions of NFTs, and somebody is going to have to kind of help us kind of curate and make sense of that. Now, I think that there may be other IP models that evolve. And so, there's like Creative Commons licenses, which is getting sort of technical, but there's
Right.
there's going to be different ways to divvy those up. I think that the thing that has really struck me, in the last 6 to 9 months, about NFTs is that, I think it really is a crossover moment where, there's an emotional connection where people are feeling passion. When I go to, a crypto conference or a tech, it's mostly, it's mostly male. Like when I go to there's more and more women, and lots of great women in this, but it's sort of, I'd say, just kind of it's still could get a lot more diverse. Whereas in New York and Miami in November, December, I saw just complete much more diverse range of people who are first of all involved, secondly really engaged and cared and passionate, and third, it's like the conversation is not just the technology and how does this work, and is this HTML, and is this consensus mechanism more than others, but people are excited about just what's being unlocked, like the images and the creativity. And I think all that stuff is just getting going. And I think what we're seeing is a really emotional connection to digital objects, which I think, whether you're talking about art or brands, is at the core of it. And we're just at the beginning of that, in my opinion.
Well, you just created such a perfect segue for for the next question. So thank you. I couldn't have scripted this better, but that is what is so inspiring to me. there are these 3D universes, like the out of the box, right? Like the Roblox, Decentraland, Epic, and Sandbox, where people and brands like Gucci created their own metaverse. They created Gucci Garden. But then there are these autonomous destinations that both brands like the Bored Ape Yacht Club and SK2, a Japanese skincare brand, they created their own platform. It's not in an out of the box platform. And one of the things that became really clear thematically, going from NFT collections to these 3D experiences, is that number one, narrative is the most important thing. To have a really strong narrative about where did this come from, like what's the story behind it, and also that there's some kind of gamification, right? Those are the two things that really, in terms of building a community, in terms of attracting audiences. And I bring up these three specifically because, for example, the Gucci Garden example, to me, I thought it was an interesting, there's no such thing as failure when you're trying a new technology. So I don't want to say that they failed, because I think you have, in order to, when you're trying new technologies, it's okay to fail. You just have to get in the game. And so I don't want to say that Gucci failed, but it was more of an archive in terms of like having their clothes and showing like ads of their ads in past history. And it was gamified a little bit, but I think that places like Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is like completely gamified, they have a very clear way to enter their universe. You have to buy an NFT to enter their universe. NFTs, they have rules in their environment, and benefits. So your NFT increases in value over time. SK2 City, the Japanese skincare brand, they created a narrative called Changing Destinies, and that comes with an animated series of female Olympians. There's also these very cool, and I can show them on screen. Here's SK2's environment. That's their animated series, but they have also these like gamified ways that you can interact with their products. And then this is Gucci's environment that I was showing, that I was talking about before. And this is Bored Ape Yacht Club has this sort of treasure hunt that they're launching soon. They launched it once before, but I guess when I was traveling through these different environments, I kept thinking about what will life look like in 10 years? How are our lives going to change in 10 years? And when I was thinking about that, I really thought about, the internet and how that changed our lives. But one of the things that I think consumers really, one of the things that frustrated consumers the most were, like the pop-up ads and the wall-to-wall advertising. And so I'm just wondering, describe a day in the life of 2030, for example, in the metaverse, as a person and a consumer, and assuming that we have the super computing available, can you share with me, how we can sort of avoid some of the missteps that we made in Web 1 and Web 2? Let's see. Let me see. Sorry, I put you on mute for a second because I heard some papers, but
all good. Yeah, let me attempt to paint a picture. So I think there's two different things here that are at play. So one is the book or movie Ready Player One, I think, fictionalizes, one scenario of what the metaverse looks like. And so let me kind of walk through that. But I'll also acknowledge, I don't think that that's the actual reality for the majority of people. And so I'll also share the counter argument in a moment. But I think it is highly probable that we will engage online or virtually with a lot of the things that we're accustomed to doing offline today. We can imagine school and education and classrooms existing virtually. Take Zoom and make it a 3D avatar, and we're essentially in a 3D meeting space or workspace. Fully expect that we're going to see concerts and sporting events also transition to kind of this metaverse or virtual worlds. And so part of the opportunity, and I think especially for kind of brands and entities looking at commerce, when you are in the online world, the same signals that offline brands create will happen in the metaverse. So case in point, you mentioned the Birkin bag or Maze, Nike, Rolex, whoever. What is stopping Rolex from selling an authenticated Rolex virtual watch? I want to get dressed in the metaverse. It could be a personified me. It could be a Bored Ape me. It could be any other avatar I wish. Let's just use Bored Ape for an example. I'm now representing a Bored Ape, and I choose to put something on my watch. I choose to put a watch on my wrist. I look over at Jeff's and I notice that his Rolex is authenticated. For those who may not be familiar, Twitter just did an authentication layer for your NFTs. And so there's this argument of, well, why can't you right-click save? Meaning, why can't I just copy it? The blockchain doesn't lie. There's only one authentic Bored Ape. There's only, in this example, one authentic Rolex watch. I can look at Jeff and say, you're missing the verified tag. Much like in the real world, I can tell you're wearing a knockoff or you're wearing a fake Rolex. Oh, but Alana, I can see your shoes are indeed, Louis Vuitton, or I can confirm that.
Jeffrey Campbell.
I can confirm. Thank you, Jeffrey Campbell. I can verify that those are real, quote, virtual goods. And I know it takes a moment to wrap your head around that, but the status matters. Social status matters. We signal things by the choices we make, and there will be ample opportunities to make those commercial decisions in the metaverse, up to and including a fairly bold prediction. I'm going to see the Nike, for example, and other large brands outsell in the metaverse in 5 to 8 years more goods than they sell in the physical world. And part of the reason is, imagine large countries like in India or China. How many people today are affording Nike shoes in India or China? Maybe not a lot, relatively speaking. Depending on price points, Nike can say you can buy an authentic Nike shoe in the metaverse for 50 cents or $1. You don't have a supply chain cost if they elect to do it that way. They can still sell the Air Jordan for 100 and the gold special Air Jordans for 10,000 if they wish. But I am deeply convinced that you're going to see meteoric rises in commercial opportunities tied to virtual and digital goods. I do want to offer just a quick counterpart, which is the real world's not going away. We're still going to have a real world, but where I think the two intersect is that status will then cross-convey real world benefits as well. So imagine Starbucks enters into a partnership with Rolex and says, if you own a virtual Rolex watch, you get 50% off or a free upgrade or whatever at every Starbucks worldwide. I walk into a Starbucks, it somehow recognizes or knows that it's me wearing that or having that, virtual good NFT, whatever, and my physical benefits redeem themselves. And so I just want to, and we can kind of, hand it over to Jeff, but I think well before we reach that full metaverse world, we're going to see extreme overlaps with how NFTs impact our day-to-day lives, up to the point where we probably just won't call them NFTs. We won't recognize them as NFTs, but they functionally will be NFT or NFT-like instruments that we use in our day-to-day. And to me, that implies all coupons, all ticketing, all loyalty programs will essentially transfer and become kind of NFT enabled. So just putting some folks' minds at not going all the way there quite yet, but it's certainly the direction.
So I do imagine this very fluid world, right? Like, I think for a little while, it's not going to be so fluid in the IRL world and the metaverse, but I do agree with you. Just a really basic aside, for example, when a brand, or let's say an artist or a brand, they have their URL. This is just a very basic question, but to me, it's like reflective of like what the metaverse means. I mean, what's the URL for this, their 3D, the 3D universe? Like we need to keep it together. Otherwise things are going to be so scattered. Do you know what I mean? Like how do we?
So answering your question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably the two biggest metaverses today in the traditional definition. One is called Decentraland, one is called Sandbox. They have coordinates, it's kind of an XY axis. And so, you might have a casino night in Decentraland at 101, parallel and 79th, whatever. No one knows that. It's clumsy. If you think of like a New York City grid, it's like, I'll meet you on the corner of, 42nd Street and 10th, whatever. You could give someone that address, but it's really just going to be a link. So it's like, do you want to come to my party? Do you want to come to my event? Do you want to visit my art gallery? Click here. There are definitely shorteners, much like you would use for like a URL or a bit.ly link or something. But some people own their direct domains. There's something called ENS or .eth addresses that you're eventually going to be able to connect to land. And so you might say, I'm at puma.eth, and that's where the event is located. And puma.eth is programmed to take you to the event on that given day, et cetera. So we'll have some facilitation there, but easiest way to imagine it is in a New York City kind of grid. There'll be street numbers and all that stuff. You can navigate there if you needed to. It's on the southwest corner of Central Park, but much more likely someone presents you with a link that says, click here to come to my thing. And just like a website link or a deep link, you arrive there directly to where you want to be.
Great. Yeah, I think that's where, when I think about also being AI powered, integrating the AI into the metaverse, but that's where I think all the possibility is in terms of our day to day. The metaverse from a personal perspective as a consumer would mirror my day-to-day life. And so that's I think it's really important, if you're, I have a creative agency, so it's important for me to really to be a visionary, at least try to and try to imagine what that experience looks like so that I can at least help guide some of our clients. Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had any.
Yeah, I mean, so I think, probably the most predictable thing is that, it probably, will not, just resemble our, current lives. And, I think, we can start to imagine how it changes. But, with each of these, like when the internet, when the internet started, the first thing people did on the internet was just replicate what they'd sort of done. And so they put classified ads on the internet and then eventually they're like, wait, we can do different things and we can interact, so the person can interact with the platform and then we can interact with each other and, for better and worse. But, I mean, I do really think and also hope that there will be multiple metaverses and not just, the Web 2. I mean, Web 2 brings a lot of convenience, but the problem with Web 2 is that, we are the product. And so, when people talk about, a decentralized metaverse or an open metaverse, there's a lot at stake. And, this kind of gets to, you brought about, pop-up ads and whatever. And, people are building technologies and ultimately something has to pay for it. And so as, people sort of contemplate the idea of, what are some of these, what is a Web3 business model? How is that different from a Web2 business model? So the difference, I think, that is simple to think about, and then, I think will really hopefully play itself out in this area. And then you'll have a sort of combination of all these things is, kind of a Web3 business model is where the participants and users of the platform, participate in the governance, whether it's through a so-called DAO or through other mechanisms, or they can vote with their tokens or whatever. But, so it's something it's more democratic with a small d, democratic, and it's more participatory. And, you can do that. And how do you have, pure democracy without chaos? And people will need to kind of work on how that's. And then the other thing is that, have participants and users of the platform actually participate in the economics. So imagine Facebook, except, like you get to vote on things if you're a user, and if the value of the platform gets up, you get some economic reward. So if you see a pop-up ad come up, you're like, well, that doesn't really bother me so much because, hey, I'm a part owner of this, and we've got to get this thing going. So, whatever. So I think, people, if somebody is an owner, even a very sort of micro owner of something, their mentality, evolves a bit. And, I think also our, vocabulary will change and like instead of URLs, there'll be something else. And like, there's this Simpsons episode where, Homer gets, a brain mail. And Marge is like, don't open it. It might be spam. But of course, Homer opens it and he's like all out. But, like, I mean, there's going to be just, the same way with NFTs and DAO, we have all this new vocabulary. I think there's going to be a lot that we can't imagine. But human nature probably will not change. It's just how it's manifested in this technology.
I just would like to see the consumer have a little bit more control and also a little bit more benefit from the, especially if they're, look, I do marketing and advertising. So, I mean, we know that will exist, but I think there is a more experiential way for that to happen versus versus like Web 1 and Web 2, which was very disruptive. I think in the metaverse and Web 3, to me, it's more about narrative and more about the experiential where, in your travels, let's say you're going to an art museum with your family along the way, because the metaverse knows, or somehow you've created your unique profile, has things that you like, that you don't like, that you control, you get served an experience that is made for you. Do you know what I mean? So it's not necessarily a disruptive experience. It's more like, oh, it's because it's AI powered. It already knows that these are the things that you might want. It's 4:00, you're in the museum. Alona, at 4:00, I get thirsty. Okay, maybe it's time that you go to the cafe for, and have a drink. One of the other things we were talking about, in terms of community, like the metaverse is really, to me, the way that the promise of the metaverse is community and openness. And that's really aligned with the tech community's already open culture, which I love. And I've been really hungry for that. The marketing and advertising industry, I love. It's just not necessarily open, but I think this is an opportunity where we can all be open, like the technology industry, people supporting people. And so, but there is, while there is a promise of openness and a desire for openness, there is a growing paradoxical trend that threatens that promise, like wallets being hacked, stolen NFTs being sold. And then one of the things that is so curious to me is that everybody from crypto creators to NFT creators have these anonymous identities. And so how can we fulfill that promise of an open and inclusive metaverse? Zeev, you want, or Jeff, anyone?
Well, I think, again, we're still kind of at the early phases of it. But, I think, kind of consciousness is a very important starting point, as, I think as, different ways to access the, as the technology evolves, for people to be kind of conscious of, what the, the creator or proprietor or proponent of it, what is the model that is being offered, and is it, sort of more of the same kind of Web 2, where, you are the, we are the product, or is it an alternate an alternate mechanism? So I think that's one, aspect of it. I think, definitely education, awareness, learning, it's incumbent on, all of us who are kind of working on these things, and also people who sort of find it interesting and exciting to start to, learn about it, follow thought leaders on Twitter, dig into it, discuss it, kind of explore it. I mean, I think there's a real opportunity for, not just being an observer, but to be a participant. And, whether you're, a creator or, a consumer, hopefully we'll start to kind of turn those definitions on their head, and the consumers can also sort of gain more, authority and agency in this space. Now, some people may not want to do it, and hopefully, there will, be lots of benefits for everybody. But I think if people sort of are not, somewhat proactive in this space, then this sort of concentration of economic and technological power that we have in Web 2 can just repeat itself. So we have a huge opportunity that I think is socially, personally, politically, economically, important and transformational. And we don't just have to accept what these kind of big or potential big tech companies are giving us. We have choices to make. And so I think to feel that empowerment and try to exercise it is very important.
Yeah, no, and yeah, I agree. I guess there was just, yes, I think education is really important, but there, like you said, there isn't a CEO of the metaverse. So I think maybe I'll just read between the lines. I think there's an opportunity for whatever brand or whatever creator whatever metaverse they want to create, they can create their own set of rules, their own language, they can do whatever they want. There's no specific trends that you need to necessarily follow, even though there are trends that I've noticed. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah,
well, there is.
maybe. Oh.
I was just going to say, there is a CCO of social media, right? And it's like Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, not just one, but maybe three, like Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and Jack Ma, if he's still running. I mean, there's there's a small number of CEOs of Web 2 that didn't exist in Web 1, and so as the metaverse and the brands and the experience there become more and more core to our lives, is there going to be another CEO? And is the CEO going to be a business person, or is it going to be a political leader? And is that the world we want to live in?
Yeah, no. Okay. I don't
maybe
think
just
so.
quickly adding something. I appreciated your point around the possibility of anonymity in the metaverse and in kind of the Web3 world. I would say that's more true at the individual collector or consumer level. I think that'll be less true at the creator or launcher level. And by that, I mean Gucci, when they're introducing something, isn't doing it anonymously. And so you have a lot of trust when you work with, especially a large project of any size. You can imagine smaller projects done anonymously, but I think that trend is waning and is being replaced by the term would be doxed. Doxed founders, doxed team, corporate teams, per my earlier comment. Something that I would just offer to folks who are looking to get in, and while a little bit more true for NFTs, I actually think it applies to cryptocurrency. I think it applies to most types of investments that a consumer may make. Someone introduced a framework called Fabric as a 6-part analysis of how to evaluate a project or a company or an NFT or coin. F stands for founding team, A stands for art, B stands for blockchain metrics, R for roadmap or utility, I for impact or innovation, and C for community. And so when we look at all those different attributes and you combine them, a little bit like doing your diligence on a stock, or a little bit even like if you wish doing your diligence on a brand. I know a lot of us, look into supply chain or, other kind of, ESG metrics that we evaluate. That's 6-part analysis, and what am I getting myself into? And F again, founding team is a big one. And if they are anonymous, it might be a reason not to be involved with them. And you certainly have a choice of who you participate with or not. So I would just offer again your viewers a little bit more confidence that it is the Wild West to some degree, but it's the Wild West with McDonald's and Burger King walking around identified. You've got Mark Cuban and others identified as who they are. Other people choose to be anonymous, but it's, again, more, the traditional consumers, quote unquote, having fun using, like, I use ZK85 as my pseudonym. But that's just more like a playful thing. And you're not buying $1 million item from me. And if you are, you're not buying it because it's me. You're buying it because it's verified on the blockchain from Bored Apes or from whoever. And the fact that I happen to own it's irrelevant. There are multiple other ways to verify and authenticate that the item is indeed, a valid one. So I just want to alleviate some concerns. It's not as scary as people perhaps may imagine it to be.
Yeah, and I think, I'm definitely pro, like, we're built on like brand trust. That's a really big theme for the work that we do. I think more, and I definitely, yes, NFT collectors who, own $1 billion collections, if they want to remain anonymous, that's fine, of course. I think it's more like when I go to Discord, for example, like, I belong to a couple brand Discord communities. And so it's a little bit alienating sometimes because the people inside those communities, you don't see anybody's names. And so to me, that's like, I'm not a gamer, so that's why it's new to me. I'm sure if I was a gamer, I'd be used to that already, because when you're gaming, you have your avatar, you have your name. So, I have to start learning, I'll start Minecraft tomorrow, I guess. I just, I don't know. I need to make the leap, but I think that's the mentality. When I go onto a known brand on Discord, there's like 1 million names, anonymous names.
Yeah, I would just add, we all know people who on Facebook or on Twitter are, T Smith 97L, like people can alter their names slightly or have some core, whatever.
Right.
I think like you, when I initially entered, it was surprising to me coming out of a professional business card. Here's my email, my cell phone, call me if you need anything. We have an easier way to access each other. What I will say is, it does offer a level of imagination and freedom to distance yourself from what we might call your LinkedIn resume. Am I young? Am I old? Am I male? Am I female? Am I American? Am I whatever, rich, poor, something? Like, you don't necessarily know. I get an opportunity, not necessarily to start over, but to represent myself in a potentially different way. And now a bad actor, a troll might just wish to be a jerk all day, and he or she could be whatever. But I know a lot of people who have corporate jobs, and if he was a corporate person, would never get away with saying or doing A, B, C, D, but in the metaverse, in a good way, are able to act more free, more comfortable, more authentic, and in many ways, I think gives them the opportunity and freedom of expression, up to and including, again, hypothetically, a Nike executive wearing a pair of Adidas shoes in the metaverse, right? So I'm exaggerating slightly, but I think there is certainly a freedom from the option of anonymity if you so desire. That's going to now get into legal and tax and others, which is its own complicated mess. But part of the advantage of the decentralized and autonomous metaverse is we are allowing ourselves, at least out of the gate, the opportunity to untether from, let's say, the social ties or the physical ties that bind us, and have an opportunity to allow our imaginations to take on new enigmalities and personas.
Yes.
And I'll give you just one 10-second example. There's a lot of people who are project leaders, who are very successful, who the industry views as, many followers and people listen to them. And as you get to know folks, a lot of them are young. 16, 17, 18, 20 years old, absolute leaders and thriving, where to walk into a room, you might judge the book by its cover and say, how can this person be so successful? In the metaverse, they're able to decouple their age, let their voice stand true, let their ideas stand true, and we evaluate them for the purity of their thought. And so I think, again, that in my mind, there's significantly more upside than downside to this model right now.
Yeah, I think if I can, I think what Zeev pointed out is very important and fascinating, particularly, let's say, in the world of kind of crypto Twitter, and kind of Discord is a bit of a carryover, or vice versa, around NFTs. And, it really is, a type of, meritocracy, in the sense that, people build up followers based on, right. Obviously a celebrity can go just based on their name. And that's also obviously a kind of a great channel, but, it's open, people can kind of build up a following based on either, the caliber of their thought leadership, or, kind of the creative work, and then people start following them and other people, and it just kind of builds organically. And yeah, like I have a number of good friends and people I work with, on a number of kind of NFT initiatives around NFT museum and NFT open city in the metaverse, and quite a number of them are people who have in real life like roles that are kind of corporate or something like that, and they just kind of establish these alternate personas. And in a number of cases, it was not because they thought NFTs were going to be big when they established these personalities a year or two ago, but sometimes they did it just for fun, just to be able to sort of vent. And I think there's also an element now in NFTs. There's no, I mean, so some people have actually valuable collections, and like the people who have valuable collections have safeguarded them in like smart contracts with distributed keys, and it's not like they actually are walking around with them. But they don't want everybody to kind of come to their house and bother them and say, hey, hand over your apes. I think there's that element too. But I think it's got given people of like corporate job or doing X to just do it and have a little bit of fun with it, but also to kind of engage the community with ideas and insights that stand on their own merits. I think it's exciting.
No, I do think that is to me, that is a really big, I think it's a great opportunity for people to be authentic and to express themselves in a real way. I think that is a great promise that I'm really excited about, not just for brands, but personally also. So, if there are probably a lot of viewers who are, relatively new to this community. So, and maybe some people are deep in it, but in terms of like, where do you think people, maybe newcomers or people that maybe have dipped their toes a little bit, where can they, where can creators and collectors find community? Like, what are the places that you recommend these people go to find community? It's such a very mercurial environment. So, for example, like, I think Discord is a great place to start, right? I mean, that to me is, but I'm just curious where, 5 places you think people should go to discover community in the crypto NFT world. A good community, a solid community.
Yeah, I'll be happy to field that. So some initial advice for folks. One thing that has absolutely surprised me is how warm and friendly people are. I think because it's such a new space, I have made lifelong friends based on people that we may never meet in the real world. We trust each other with trades, with money, with advice, and so just the one thing that I would say, almost at start, not surprisingly, how authentic and genuine the majority of people are. I also want to be clear, there are wolves out there, there are scammers out there. It's not blind trust, but people will find that there's just an immense receptivity to newcomers coming in and asking genuine questions. And what we would consider the leaders are going to be very happy to share their knowledge, open up additional doors, etc. Practically speaking, answering your question, I think Twitter could be a really great starting point, and almost as a rule of thumb, follow everyone that has a cartoon profile picture. So those of us that use like a real traditional headshots, that's kind of too old and boring. And so if they're using one of these cartoon PFPs, it looks a little funny, whatever, follow them. See who they're following and keep following. And so I technically have 2 different Twitters. I have my ZK85 NFT Twitter, which is my cartoon avatar one, and then my kind of real one. But in kind of Jeff called it kind of crypto Twitter. There's NFT Twitter. It's its own world, completely its own world, and candidly a loving, playful, joyful world. And so that's just a really easy starting point. You mentioned Discord. Discord, like Twitter, is a tool, but within Discord, you have to join specific communities. And I would say there's certain communities that are more welcoming than others as entry points. Promoting something of mine briefly, House of First was primarily built on one of the premises is to be welcoming to people looking to acquire their first ever NFT. And so for those who are interested, feel free to find us on Discord or on Twitter. Join our community. We're building out channels for mentorship. Our next collection is called Remarkable Women. It specifically emphasizes women empowerment with a mission to support additional representation and inclusion for women, men, and allies. But we are overtly building bridges and pathways for people who are new to crypto, new to NFTs, new to blockchain, and are seeking community and camaraderie. We also convene in real world. So we'll do events in Los Angeles, we'll be at South by Southwest in New York and London, etc. But I would just, guide people that the easiest way to begin is to just raise your hand, express interest, kind of take that first step, and you'll find the community will take 2 steps to meet you more than halfway, to welcome you into what we think is one of the greatest opportunities, as Jeff had said.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, Zeev, it's the House of First. Where would they find? So it's the houseoffirst.com. Is that where?
Yeah, so it's houseoffirst.com is a great place to begin. Our Discord can be linked off of that. Our Twitter is House of First. We just opened up our LinkedIn, so there's not a tremendous amount there, but they'll all get to the same place. Again, I'm ZK85. Feel free to reach out and follow me. I'm ZK85 on Discord, on Twitter, and we are literally built to help onboard and welcome folks looking for their first ever NFT. We have channels that, from your springboard with us, guide you to other communities, other things going on. It's part of our strategy to just be a safe place for people to land, and hopefully then kind of grow and expand their interest once they arrive.
Great.
Yeah, and I would say, just to sort of think of it, how can people start to access this? And I definitely will check out House of First also, which I wasn't previously familiar with. I think there's a few good places to look. I think I totally agree with Zeev's advice. Find some smart people to follow, and then see who they follow and follow those people. I think a really good kind of explainer of NFTs is called Punk6529 on Twitter, and then there's like very long tweet threads about how to think about squiggles and how to safeguard those, and also some of the open metaverse stuff that I was talking about. There's a really good podcast that Tim Ferriss did with, if I can promote another podcast that Tim Ferriss did in I think about October 2021 with Chris Dixon and Naval Ravikant, talking about NFTs and Web3. And it's kind of ironic because, Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, and then the podcast is 2.5 hours long. So, it's, I guess, I don't know what he did the other hour and a half. That one's very good. And then to start to follow, some of the other like art blocks, is sort of very interesting when it comes to generative art. And, I think, again, follow those and see who follows them, and follow some individual artists. Tyler Hobbs is an interesting artist who created Fidenzas and Incomplete Controls. And you just
I minted a Fidenza and I sold it at 3 ETH. It was probably my worst NFT trade of the year so far. So I'm proud that I got in, and I paper handed it a bit early.
Yeah, if you've got any more Fidenzas, I'm happy to offer you double that.
All right.
That was a big.
Yeah, they have. I put on screen. Punk6529 has like a very in-depth Twitter manifesto. And he's creating a really strong community, a very kind community. That's one of the things that I noticed. So I didn't get any comments. I didn't get any questions from our audience, but I wanted to just thank both of you, Jeff Bandman from Bandman Advisors and Zeev Klein from Landmark Ventures. I'm so grateful for your time today. This was a very rewarding and enriching conversation with the both of you. And I hope to have the both of you back, maybe in a couple months. But I will be sending out some communications with with the houseoffirst.com and some of the things that you are all working on. But and just again, viewers, this is a a QR code to our newsletter if you want to sign up. And we'll be back in 2 weeks for our next episode 8. So thank you both for your time. Have an incredible rest of week, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.